Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Maddie Salomon, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm an attorney, a former college athlete, and I was also chair of the Division I Student Athlete Advisory Committee while I was in school. Now in this episode, we're going to discuss a fairly serious issue, and it's one related to a complaint that was filed by a former Penn State football player recently. Some of the allegations in the complaint are graphic, and we're going to discuss them. So if you're a minor or a parent, bear that in mind before watching the video, and maybe watch with parental guidance. The crux of the complaint in this case is essentially that 4 players on the team were deliberately engaging in behavior designed to harass and haze the lower classmen on the team. And that when plaintiff and perhaps others reported some of this behavior, nothing was done by the coaches. And the complaint also alleges that the coaches in some cases actually saw some of the behavior and did nothing. And further, that when the plaintiff brought forth some of these complaints to the coaches, they tried to get him to leave the team, which he eventually did. But at first it was that they wanted to medically retire him. Also, they, provided negative reviews of the plaintiff to prospective colleges. The plaintiff in this case is Isaiah Humphreys, and he was a freshman on the Penn State football team during the 2018 season. He ended up transferring in December of 2018 to University of California, where he was required to sit out the 2019 season due to NCAA rules. He is suing Penn State University, head coach of the Penn State football team, James Franklin, and a former teammate, Damian Barber, who at the time of the events in this case was a redshirt freshman. He also mentions 3 other teammates in the complaint, though they are not named defendants, but they, according to the complaint, had a role in the events in this case. This complaint was filed January 13th, 2020, and it was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. And that's significant for the reason being that the claims in the complaint are based on state law. So usually you would file this in a state court. But there are procedural rules that allow a plaintiff in some cases to choose to file in federal court. So in this case, in order to get this case into federal court, plaintiff is claiming that there is diversity of citizenship, which is one of the exceptions. So in that case, it simply means that all of the defendants in the case are citizens of a different state than the plaintiff. It is important to bear in mind, as we're discussing some of the details of this complaint, that this is a civil action, and so this is not criminal. At this point, the district attorney's office has not chosen to file charges in this case. So essentially the punishment would be financial. It won't result in any jail time. Plaintiff in this case is accusing all defendants of having committed negligence per se in having violated anti-hazing statutes, both within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and also on the campus level, as well as negligent infliction of emotional distress. He's also making specific allegations against Damian Barber and accusing him of having committed assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a civil conspiracy to haze and embarrass and abuse basically his teammates. The reason the anti-hazing statutes are relevant is that in a claim of negligence, the plaintiff has the burden of proof to show that the defendant owed some duty of care as part of their negligence claim. Negligence per se, without going super in the weeds of legal jargon, essentially allows a plaintiff to use a statutory obligation to meet its burden. And essentially, in a case where a defendant violated a statute, the plaintiff has to show that they're within the class of citizens that is meant to be protected by that statute, and that the injuries that the plaintiff sustained were also what the statute aimed to prevent. And so in this case, according to the Timothy J Piazza Antihazing Law, a person commits the offense of hazing if the person intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly, for the purpose of initiating, admitting, or affiliating a minor or student into or with an organization, or for the purpose of continuing or enhancing a minor or student's membership or status in an organization, causes, coerces, or forces a minor or student to, among others, endure brutality of a physical nature, including whipping, beating, branding, calisthenics, or exposure to the elements, endure brutality of a mental nature, including activity adversely affecting the mental health or dignity of the individual, sleep deprivation, exclusion from social contact, or conduct that could result in extreme embarrassment, endure brutality of a sexual nature, and endure any other activity that creates a reasonable likelihood of bodily injury to the minor or student. Now, the interesting thing about the anti-hazing statute in Pennsylvania, which many states have, is that it was actually amended in 2018 as a result of a death that occurred on Penn State's campus. Timothy J Piazza, after whom the amended law is named, died after a hazing incident at his fraternity, and the amendment to the prior anti-hazing law actually increased some of the penalties associated with hazing, and it provided prevention, enforcement, and transparency. And the bill increased penalties for all of those involved in hazing and requires schools to have policies and reporting procedures in place to stop hazing and inform students and parents of what is happening on campus. Now, I'm going to go into some of the specific details of this case, and once again, I want to put out a reminder that some of the details are graphic. So if you're a minor, ask your parent before you watch this, and additionally, some of the details are of a sexual nature, so if that is something that may trigger you, perhaps don't watch any further. According to the complaint, there was some very disturbing language and phrases that were used in order to harass and intimidate some of the underclassmen, one of which being, "I'm going to Sandusky you," and "this is Jerry." Now, Jerry Sandusky, of course, being the former Penn State assistant football coach who was convicted of 45 counts of child abuse involving 10 young boys who were involved in his charities, and the events took place at Penn State. So to say that to a teammate is extremely disturbing, to say the least. And then there was some other explicit language that was used. In addition to the very disturbing language that was used, the complaint also alleges that there was some very disturbing behavior, much of which, if true, actually amounts to sexual assault, which included taking the clothes of lower classmen and not returning them, wrestling the lower classmen to the ground, and while maintaining a restraint of the lower classmen, simulating a humping action while on top of the lower classmen. Or while another teammate was restraining the lower classmen, another participant would place his genitals on the face of the lower classman, or would present his penis close to the face of the lower classman and stroke his genitalia, simulating the action of ejaculation, or would place his penis on the buttocks of the lower classman and stroke his genitalia, stimulating the action of ejaculation. There are also allegations that these behaviors took place while the lower classmen were in the showers, which included participants placing their penises between the cheeks of the buttocks of the lower classmen, such as the plaintiff, while naked in the locker room shower, or placing their penises on the body of the lower classmen, such as the plaintiff, while naked in the locker room shower. And there are also allegations that the individuals accused would grab the genitalia of the lower classmen. The complaint also states that the plaintiff's father, who was an ex-Penn State football player himself, as well as an ex-NFL player, is one of the people that went into the coaches to describe the alleged behavior, and that, according to the complaint, nothing serious was done. Now, apparently there was eventually an investigation conducted by the Penn State University Office of Student Conduct. Now, this investigation took place May 22nd, 2019, according to the complaint, and they concluded that Damian Barber committed prohibited behavior in violation of the Penn State University Student Code of Conduct, and that he was sanctioned. Setting aside this specific case for a second, the issue of hazing and bullying and harassment on teams is a very serious one. And it's one that goes on a lot of teams, especially within college, and is often not addressed. And the result of it in many cases is, either teammates quitting or, transferring schools. Part of the problem is the dynamic that happens on a team. And you see it with all sorts of group dynamics, and you see it before college. I mean, this stuff happens in high schools. I know way too many people who really were bullied by teammates in the locker rooms with behavior that isn't that dissimilar from some of the things that were alleged in this complaint. And so they're very real. But part of the problem on teams is that you have, on some level, bystander effect, I guess is a way of putting it, that teammates who see the behavior and may not even agree with what's going on don't stand up for the teammates that are being mistreated or assaulted. And in some cases, it's, they fear retaliation. Some of it is that, this is just part of being a team, which is a mindset that should not be the mindset. There should not be a situation where anyone is made to feel, endangered or uncomfortable or embarrassed. Coaches need to do a better job of, keeping an eye on that behavior and being aware of it when it's happening. Because the thing is that as a coach, you can generally tell who is happy on the team, who fits in with the rest of the team, and then those who, may be struggling a little bit. And it is your obligation as a coach to be monitoring your team. And that includes being aware of how people are doing on the team, who is, part of the group, who's struggling more, who is maybe ostracized by their teammates. Those things are important. Not only do they go to team dynamics, which affect the success of a team, but it's your obligation as a coach to make sure that everybody is safe and protected on your team. And that includes their mental well-being. Because a player being bullied and mistreated and physically assaulted is not going to have a very easy time functioning in the world at a point, because that starts to affect mental health. It leads to depression. It leads to, feelings of isolation. And if it is allowed to continue for long periods of time, it can create all sorts of long-term issues and, PTSD. And especially in cases where coaches become aware of this behavior, they have a heightened responsibility to nip that behavior in the bud and bring everyone together and institute an absolute no tolerance policy that those things can continue to go on the team. Because team dynamics are top down. They are controlled by the coaches. If players believe that they will, be able to get away with treating a teammate badly, they're going to do it. If they know that there are consequences for it, that behavior stops quickly. And it's more than just fearing punishment too. There should be instilled in every team a sense of actually taking care of your teammates and not bullying them and mistreating them just because they can. And hazing is certainly one form of that taking place. And, while it goes on most teams to varying degrees, it shouldn't. And the coaches should under no circumstances be the ones condoning it. Now, this again, it's part of the entire problem. Players are not protected, and they're almost incentivized not to report bad behavior and to really just endure it longer, because what they face on the other end of trying to leave a situation can often put them in a very bad situation, at least for a period of time, before they actually get away. And in this case, that's exactly what it seems happened if the allegations are true. When this player reported bad behavior, he was treated horribly and forced to endure things he should not have. And that is exactly what the NCAA needs to protect, and they do not. Because not only do they not control coaches' behavior and monitor that, they put that on the schools, but there really are no systems in place for these athletes. That's it. They report it, it's investigated, and if the investigation doesn't, come up with anything substantial or the university decides not to pursue it, that's it. And, then they're treated to this behavior, and that's not acceptable. And so they should not be forced to stay at a place to avoid losing eligibility. That shouldn't be a concern. They should be able to go to the place that they need, get the help that they need, and be protected. And the system is simply not designed that way. And that is one of the biggest things that needs to change. So there are still obviously lots of developments in this case because this was just filed, so there's not even any discovery that's been done at this point. But we will follow up with this, of course. Please feel free to comment below if you have similar experiences, if you have, details you want to share about this case or your opinions about it. Please feel free to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you back for another episode. All right, thanks.
This video may constitute attorney advertising. The ideas expressed in this video by Maddie Salomon, as well as any posted comments, are opinions intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. Receipt of this information, or using the YouTube platform or other social media platforms to contact the White Channel, does not create an attorney-client relationship.